I am the assistant team leader for the Swiftwater Rescue Team. I work down at Station 10 on A shift, firefighter low. He's still part of the Swiftwater Rescue Team. He works at 29 on C shift, right? So we'll get you through this. The whole idea behind this program is basically just to give you some more general awareness of what you can do on an inland water type call. I think for the longest time, we pretty much said, look, it's water, let the Swiftwater guys do the work. And that's true to some extent, but there's going to be some changes coming up where, depending on the types of certification that you have, and even not having this technical certification to go in the water, there's stuff that you guys can do to set the stage for the scene on these calls to improve the survivability of the people that are stuck in the water. So just to kind of get everybody relaxed, I know we're all a little tired. Got a couple of videos for you guys to watch just to kind of get you into the mindset of what some of these calls that we're running.
Hold on. Why in the world did you try that?
Because it's fun.
You were floating sideways out there.
I know, trust me. I know.
Yeah. Did you think you weren't going to make it?
Oh, absolutely. There was that point. I said, oh, looks like I'm swimming.
Can you give me your name?
Mike.
Okay. You don't want to give me more?
Mike Beloit. I don't care.
Right. So there's a time where I thought I wasn't going to make it. I thought I was swimming. I don't care. Thought it was fun, right? This is in Montgomery County. I don't know if anybody recognized that street. It's in Fords area. So, you know, we know the roads flood a lot, right? When you've got actual water markers on either side of the street. Because we recognize, okay, well, there's water across here all the time, enough that we actually put depth on there. So he even knew the depth where the road was and still chose to drive through because he thought it was fun. Everybody notice the depth of the water?
29 with you.
Go ahead, 29.
One call, like breathe out of the water. Drop them, we don't push up, put out here, baby.
We did it 29, that's 4.
So you can see the rims of the bottom of that car, right? Now, obviously, it looks like there's some junk or something right here next to the car, right? And again, I don't know how deep the water was initially. Like maybe it was all the way up to the hood of the vehicle. I don't know. But if that was the case, they determined that, look, we need to go rescue this guy, get him out of the water. So they set up the aerial ladder and brought the aerial out to him. By the time it's all said and done, the water's receded and gone down. Is this a scenario where this should have been the first option? Probably not, right? It seems really ridiculous to have guys 10 feet away from this car when there's literally no water on the roadway at all. Now again, when we'll talk more about this later on as far as the hazards in the roadways and things that we need to be looking out for, but in my opinion, this is a scenario where you get there, you mark the water line, see what the water line's doing, and then you stop and you just tell the guy, look, I'm sorry, you're inconvenienced for 20, 30 minutes. Stay in your car, the water will recede, and when it does, you can step out and walk towards us. Does it make sense? So again, kind of get you guys thinking about these calls, like it might not be a true emergency right off the get down. This one doesn't have any audio. This is an ice rescue. We're not really going to focus too much on ice rescue, but I want you guys to pay close attention to this guy right here and this guy right here. There's another guy in this boat. There's actually a kid hanging on right over here. There's a kid right here, and then there's another one right in front. And these guys, they have an inflatable boat, right? They got some type of rope going out to them. There's kids stuck on the ice, a true emergency, something needs to be done, right? Watch what happens to this guy here as soon as he enters the water. Who's he saving? He actually just kicked this kid off of the ice that he was hanging on to right now. Now he's trying to climb back into the boat. Who's this guy saving? There's a kid hanging on right here. He's now pulled two of the kids in. The other kid's hanging on. He's grabbing him, pulling him into the boat. What's going on here? Full turnout gear. So we've already established that 3 small children is not enough to hold this ice, but 25 dudes in full turnout gear plus ladders plus equipment will be fine, no problem. Are we 100% focused on rescuing these kids right now? See all the people out on the ice? Luckily, nobody died. Everybody survived. All 3 kids survived. But this is one of those close call scenarios where, in my opinion, it could have been a lot worse. You know, 2 or 3 of those firefighters in full turnout gear fall through the ice, no flotation, nothing on. They're going straight down to the bottom. I don't know how deep it is there, but you know, then what? The 2 guys that were in full rescue mode, in my opinion, probably weren't trained correctly in whatever suit they had on. I think they had a Gumby suit, which is not a dry suit. Gumby suit, you still get wet. And my assumption is that they actually ended up getting that cold water shock. And when they got that, they completely lost focus of saving the kids and they went into self-preservation mode. Again, it goes back to training, the gear that we carry with us. And in my opinion, there should be somebody that should be stopping all of this. I'm okay with what happened initially. At least you sent a couple people out, but somebody's got to be the bad guy, if you will, and keep all these other dudes that want to do something off of that ice to prevent them from killing themselves. You know, luckily, everybody probably got awards, gold medals, but we really need to think about what we're doing. So with that, what we're going to talk about today, basically just what we're going to do getting on the scene, the different types of water that you guys are going to encounter, what you can do on the scene depending on your certification, and then the PPE that we carry, and then how you can move forward with what you can do now on these calls. Technical difficulties. What you can do now on these calls to prevent some of the mistakes that we've made in the past. So this is an old video, and it's upstate New York, and basically want you to pay attention as to the confidence that these guys had. I don't know their full certification, but they had confidence that they were highly trained. They had the right skills, they had the right resources to make this body recovery happen. Now, what happened was a firefighter, the rescue from the day before, ended up drowning, got stuck in a hydraulic, and you'll see his body churning in this hydraulic. He's not alive, it's a body rescue, so they have come up with this plan. And watch what happens.
That's good.
In the rescue failures that we've had a chance to investigate, we found that the firemen, as they approached the boil, the hydraulic at the base of the dam, actually felt confident that they were going to be able to perform the rescue, and were completely unfamiliar with the fact that a tremendous power of water was going to draw them up into the face of the dam, regardless of how powerful their motor was. They were confident in their skills also, and found out too late that the technique they had planned to use, a direct contact with the victim, was going to put them in a situation where they're trapped again with the victims.
Binghamton, New York, September 29, 1975. A television news team videotaped this attempt to recover the body of a fireman drowned during a rescue the day before. The boat is approaching the boil.
Is that the fire chief in the boat?
The guy standing up. Did it pick up speed?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. It's the guy away from the boat that's the trouble.
Two of the men are now lost. More than an hour has passed since the victim first entered the water. A number of shore-based attempts to save him have failed.
There he is. Hang on to the boat, kid. God, hang on to the boat. No. Come on, kid, fight. Come on. You almost got out of the wash. Here they come.
The second boat crosses the boil.
They might be able to get it. Pops out this time, should be able to grab him. Watch this boat. There goes that boat. That boat's gonna go over. That boat's gonna go over. Huh? Is that Tommy? There's swamps too. Yeah, there they go.
The boat has broken the uniform current of the hydraulic, and all three men are slowly washed out alive.
That guy's gonna get out.
3 others are dead.
That's what they should all do, try to get out.
There's whirlpools throughout. It would suck you down, it would hold you, it would move you along the bottom. You'd be torn through debris and so forth, battered and bruised, and then all of a sudden it just push you to the top. There was no ability to swim. There's nothing you could do for yourself. You just had to go with it. It's like a monster's got a hold of you, and there's just nothing you can do, nothing at all.
It doesn't look dangerous, just like this does not look particularly dangerous. But the danger is there. It's hidden from you.
So, again, they were confident that what they could do was going to work. They tried it, it didn't work, and then they did the same thing over again, and unfortunately more firefighters died because of it. And that's something that I want you guys to get out of this, is that, you know, sometimes you might want to be able to do something, but doing something is going to make the situation worse and either, you know, injure or kill you or your crew, depending on what you're going to do. You know, don't underestimate the power of this water. Don't underestimate, you know, well, it looks okay. I mean, anybody looking at that low head dam, it doesn't look that bad, right? It's a really small drop. The water looks fairly calm as it's going over. And those guys completely underestimated the power of that low head dam, thought their boats were going to be okay, thought that they would be fine. And we saw that that wasn't the case. So the types of water, basically flat, swift, and flood is what we're going to be focusing on today. Ice rescue, we all run those calls. We don't really focus too much on that. Those kind of become a different animal in and of themselves. There is an ice rescue class that I highly recommend you contact the PSTA, and you can get your shift or station detailed to it. It's a 2-day class, and it gives you a real good appreciation for the ice rescue. You'll do both swimming and in ice stuff to just see how cold that water actually is. So our floods, basically your flash is what we're going to see, you know, like Ellicott City. Our river floods, anywhere along the Potomac River, you get lots of rain and the river comes up. And then our urban flooding, which is just when we have so much rain from these thunderstorms that everything else is taxed and the water has nowhere else to go. So we can all think of the flat, static water areas, lakes, ponds. Something you also have to think about are these residential sediment ponds that they make for all these houses, because obviously you build these houses in an area that usually had lots of trees and grass, and now it's concrete. The water's got to go somewhere because it's not being absorbed, so they create these sedimentation ponds for the water runoff. Well, that's great if you get a normal type of rain. Any over-taxation of the soil and the land and the rain ends up happening, the rain floods, and then the sedimentation ponds get overtaxed and it's got to go somewhere. So swift water, predominantly we think of swift water as the Potomac River, anywhere where, you know, you can see that white water, pretty much considered swift water. As far as our definition, NFPA 1670 basically says it's faster than 1.14 miles an hour. It's swift water. That's great. I like numbers. We're not going to be able to really measure that as far as, hey, I can see that water, it's 1.14 miles per hour. The average human can walk 3 miles an hour. If you're looking at that water and the water is moving quicker than you're walking, you know that that water is moving at least to a point where it's swift water. Michael Phelps can't make progress against 2.3 miles an hour water. And I'll say this from a swift water standpoint, and I'm sure Caleb will agree with me. Anytime we're in the water, I'm not swimming against the current. I'm swimming with it. We use the current even in the boats. Occasionally we might have to try to overpower it, but we are using the current to get where we need to go. We're not fighting against it. And that's the biggest thing with swift water. It's so powerful, it moves so quickly, and it's so strong that if you try to fight it, you're going to end up downstream. The difference is you use the current, you look at the hydrology, and you use it to your advantage to get you to where you want to be. So if I want to cross a river and we're trying to get across, I put myself way upstream from where I think I'm going to come out, because I know the water is going to push me downstream. Even though I'm making progress across it, I need to give myself that extra buffer room because the water is going to push me down so fast. I'm not swimming against it, I'm pretty much swimming with it. So if you have to move more quickly than a very slow walk, it's probably swift water. Flooding pretty much is happening more and more. I think back to, I've got 16 short years on this job, and I can never remember a time those first 5 years where we were running flooding calls. I feel like over the last 5-6 years, where anytime it rains, we're running flooding now. There's some type of swift water call goes out, car stuck in the water. It just seems like it's happening more and more. And the root cause of all of this, and especially in this urban area, is all this over-urbanization. You know, you think about 32's area. Think about what this place looked like 15 years ago. I mean, it was all farmland. There was plenty of place for this rain to absorb through the water, and now you look at it and it's nothing but concrete. Well, concrete's not going to absorb the water. Water's got to go somewhere, and it goes into the storm system, but these systems don't have enough, especially with some of the heavy rains that we're getting, to control it. And what ends up happening is we have those low-lying areas where the water pools and floods, and that's where we get these flooding calls. Take a look at this video. We'll talk about it at the end, but just watch the storm drain. Dog definitely does not like that. So, anybody ever lifted a manhole cover with a Halligan bar, right? They're super lightweight, right? You can lift it up with one finger. Pretty heavy, right? So, you saw how easily that thing came off with that water. What you're seeing there is a sewer system that is completely overtaxed. Obviously, it doesn't look like it's raining a lot there, right? So either the rain came through and went away, or it might be raining somewhere else and the water is coming down through that system. The bottom line is that sewer system has nowhere else for the water to go. So it shoots up and the storm cover comes off. Scenario for you just to kind of think about this stuff, right? Going back to look at that, we kind of made fun of that call where the car had the water just to the bottom of the rims of the tires, right? So we'll say basically water just to about here. So this guy, he drives through it, he's going fast. It's rained a little bit more now, so there's water up to the rims and he stalls out right there. Water doesn't look very high, it doesn't look like it's moving. Hey, come get me, I don't want to get my feet wet, whatever. So, you guys park up here somewhere. It doesn't, you know this area, you know that it's, doesn't look like, you know that there's nothing on either side. So you're like, hey, let's just go in and grab this guy real quick, no big deal. No clue about this, right? And this is something that we really need to be careful of. And just from a swift water standpoint, when I'm engaging in actual in-water operations, that's why we carry our poles with us, and we have them just like if you were on a roof and you're sounding the roof for stability on a fire. I'm doing that with the road, and I have a stick in front of me and I'm just basically poling as I go along, looking for things like that manhole cover. And so you take it for granted that, oh, it's just a rural street, it's no big deal, but flood water is nasty brown, you can't see through it. And so even with a little bit of cover on here, you wouldn't be able to see this manhole. You fall into that system, everybody saw how much water was in there, right? You're not coming back from that. So just the little things that you don't really think about. I know the first due area, I know that water's not that deep, I know that road. This is a dumb call. There's no reason why all these swift water guys have to come. There's no reason why we can't just walk out there. I have my boots on, it's only ankle deep, no big deal. And the next thing you know, you fall through a storm drain and you're dead. And that's where we need to be really careful on these calls, because we don't know what's going on. We don't know what happened before, and we really need to pay attention to this stuff. And these are the extra things that we get in these swift water training classes to look out for things like this during these flooding calls. This was a time lapse for Ellicott City. It was the first one, not this most recent one, but it still gives you a good idea as to how quick these flash floods happen. And you can see that pretty much as soon as the rain came through, it was only 15 minutes and it was already impassable. So you can see it didn't take long at all. It's also a good Jeep commercial if anybody likes Jeep. And you can already see the water start to recede. You see the people come out. So obviously there's people in these businesses, right, on both sides. They call somewhere around here, hey, the road's flooded, come get me, I need help. What are we doing? What are we doing for them? Anything? So you can see it didn't take long for the water to start receding. So these flash floods, right, they come and go real quick. So in any of these, what's the point in us trying to go down this when the water is here, when all I have to do is tell you, hey, move to the back of your building, can you get to the second floor, can you get to higher ground, and just wait it out, because in an hour you'll be able to walk out of there no problem, right? That's a simple solution. We helped them out, right? We told them what to do, we gave them a direction to go, but we didn't have to put anybody in harm's way. We knew it was going to come and go just as quick. So what's the point of actively engaging in this and trying to rescue people when the water's like that? Make sense? So here's another type of flash flood. This is out west in California. But just kind of pay attention to how quick it happens. I'm thinking he drove through that first part by the bridge. That should have been his first clue. Now that little Prius is going to try to drive through it next. So again, I'm thinking he drove through that bridge with that mucky, dirty water. Oh yeah, man, I'll just make it through. I'll get over into the hill. I'll be okay. And wasn't thinking, hey, there's going to be something around the corner. And it happens quick. So luckily, in that sense, he was able to back up. There was nobody really behind him. So, but what happens once he gets into that? Doesn't take a lot of water depth. That speed can move a car just as quick. So typically for us, that's kind of what we're running, right? These urban floodings. We do run the river floods, but the river floods we kind of know in advance. A lot of those areas we're kind of well prepared along the Potomac River, as far as we know at this height, at this much water being predicted, we know that we're going to have to move people out, or White's Ferry closes. We do things in preparation for it. We even kind of do that in Montgomery County too, right? Down in Battalion 1, where we know when the river comes up right there by 495, what happens, right? We put the gates down. We lock it, we keep people out because we know the water is going to rise. So we can all think of, these calls where we're running now. And like I was saying, it's more frequent and more intense in the last 40 years. And it really plays a big part in that urbanization. That over-urbanization of this area is a direct correlation with these flooding, because this water has nowhere else to go. So you can see large floods have increased by 100, small floods have increased by 200. Again, it's just, look at this area, look at how developed it is. There's just nowhere else for this water to go. Whereas before we accounted for this excess rain, we had places for it to go because the soil would actually absorb it. Now we can't account for that, so we're right at the limit every time it rains, which produces these flooding calls. So this is between 12 and 16's border. Again, flooding volume increased 600% since the year 1950. You can blame global warming, and maybe that has a part in it, but I really think if you look at the way this area looked in 1950 and the way that it looks today, I think you can really see the urbanization and the buildings that are here that weren't there before. We get a major rainstorm before, water had more places to absorb, more trees, more grass to absorb it, whereas now that's just not the case. Flooding hazards are pretty much anything you can think of, because you're now taking water and you're putting it in an area where there isn't water. We don't expect things like picnic tables and manhole covers and all these things that normally without water won't move or do anything. All of a sudden now we put water in the mix and water pushes and moves them, and so we add all these hazards. So you think about all the stuff that you see on the road, all the stuff all the trash, all the garbage, you know, people leaking oil, cars spilling gasoline, all that stuff sits on the roadway, and then when it rains it collects and then it just kind of merges all together, which makes it really, really nasty, which is one of the big reasons why anytime we're doing any type of in-water flooding scenario, dry suits are 100% required, because you don't want to have that nasty stuff exposed to your skin. So even on the hottest day, even if it's really muggy out, you know, we'll still have a dry suit on even after the fact. So it's not raining anymore, but we're still running flooding calls. If it's a flooding scenario, a dry suit needs to be worn. Protect you from all the stuff that you can be exposed to. So you can see here, gas station is kind of, he was prepared for the flood, but you can still kind of see the sheen coming from, I don't know, this building here. Caleb pointed out last time that you don't see the grease sheen from the Burger King, which surprises me. But again, all this stuff, you know, even if you're just wading through this, you know, that's going to get on the petroleum products. It's all going to get on your skin, pretty nasty. And you don't want to be able to, you don't want to bring any of that stuff home with you. So first scenario for you guys, doesn't matter what unit you're on, we'll just say you arrive on a unit, you're with you and your partner, maybe another person, if you're on a heavy, and this is what you have, right? So think about, what would your initial actions be? What would you do for this person? And then we'll talk about it at the end of the video.
They're going much farther down there, it's going to get out of
Yeah. If it keeps raining, it's going to get worse and it will push it away. Oh, son of a bitch! Oh my God!
I apologize for the language, I forgot to say that. So, looked pretty normal, right? Initially, changed a little bit. What do you think happened? Water level probably rising?
Stop! No, he needs to get out! Fuck! Oh my God! Oh my God! Someone get... Oh my God, oh my God.
Fall out. Get out of your window, come on.
I hope he opened his window already.
Come on, get out that window, come on.
Oh shit, here we go, here we go, here we go. Fuck! Fuck! Oh my God, oh my God! No, don't do it, don't. Oh my God, oh my God.
Did he get out? No.
It's... Stay back, Layla, stay back!
Alright, so what are we doing for this person? Nothing?
Right there.
Yeah, the ladder trucks could maybe try and do something.
Okay. All right. So maybe try to set something up. Okay. Once it gets to here, what are we doing? So you started setting up the ladder truck. Now it's too far away. The ladder truck's not an option anymore, right? So nothing? Anybody else? Anything? So,
you're a fire department, man, you gotta make it better.
Right? Well, that's what,
Make it better.
I mean, that's the interpretation, right? That's what people think, right? We're fire department's here. All right, great. Now I can continue recording so I can get more YouTube video hits, but you guys are going to make it better. And you get there and you're just standing there and you're not doing anything. Right? It sucks. Absolutely right. I'll tell you, from a Swiftwater experience perspective, I get on the scene in Swiftwater, even with my boats, there's nothing I'm doing for this person right now. All right? If that makes you feel any better. There's just nothing. This person was put there, as crappy as it is, they put themselves in the situation. They drove in, right? Yes, we want to try and help them. We'll do what we can, but there's nothing we can physically do. I can't put a boat in that. I can't swim in that. I can't control anything about this. We know the water's probably rising because it's already moved the car. I don't know what else is going on, the importance of marking the water line, but there's nothing I can do for that person right now. All right? Anybody notice all these people over here on the shoreline? Obviously, you knew the people on this shoreline, right? Because he's like, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? He's willing the car to stop with his hand. What can we do for them? Yeah. So in this scenario, you know, me, Mr. Big Swiftwater guy, I'm going to get on the scene and I'm going to tell this guy, get back. I'm going to hopefully have some type of air horn to get those people's attention and get those people back. If the best thing that happens is I get him, Layla, and these 12 people away from the water because they're thinking, oh, well, he's not doing anything. Why? Well, maybe we'll do something. If I can keep these people from entering the water and this guy from entering the water, we've saved, 12 people. All right? We've saved the people that we can save. No different than if it was a house fire and you've got 2 people hanging out of the window over here because it's smoky and there's next to it a bedroom that's fully off and you know there's people in both. Which one are we going for? We're going for the people that are alive, right? We're going to save those people first and we're going to do what we can. It's the same thing here. The best thing that you can do in a lot of these situations is keep the people back from trying to be those would-be rescuers and help injuring themselves even more. As you can see, as this car goes down stream here, all those people have now continued, right? They're following that car downstream, all right? At some point in time, are they going to choose to jump in and try to get them? I don't know. But if we can prevent that from happening, in this scenario, maybe we've only lost 1 life instead of 4, 5, 6, whatever. Does that make sense? Crappy situation. I'm not saying that it's easy or it's not going to be emotionally charged, but sometimes the best thing we can do is just deny entry for these types of calls, and it is what it is. I was talking to some of the communications guys, and they were saying that if in Montgomery County, so this is for a Montgomery County call, if this person in this white car calls 911 and they say, I'm stuck in the floodwaters, help me. ECC is going to ask them, do you think the water is rising? If the answer to that is yes, ECC's direction is going to be climb up to the roof. All right? If it's perceived no, or they don't think the water's rising, they say, no, I think the water's just staying where it's at, they'll tell them to stay in the vehicle. So one thing that you guys, without even looking at a call, right, if this was in Montgomery County, and obviously we know the water's rising, but if this was in Montgomery County and he's still in the vehicle, you mark the water line, there might be a good chance that the water's not rising because ECC is going to direct them to get onto the roof. If you get on the scene and you got people on the roof, what does that tell us? ECC's told them to get on the roof because they think the water's rising. So just a real contextual clue on these calls, just to kind of give you an idea where this call might be heading. I mean, are we always 100% right? Do people always follow direction? No. But you can at least have an idea, well, look, if they're on the roof, maybe we do have a little something. That make sense? So take a look at the roadway here as it pans across. And how many people are going to probably steer in Montgomery County to the left of this and just continue on driving? Probably. So I'll fully admit that if I'm not paying attention, I'm probably driving doing the same thing, right? Because nobody's looking at over here. All we're saying is, oh, I can still see. I mean, you can see the line, right? It's not that bad. And I think in Montgomery County, a lot of people would. But there's definitely something going on here. Trees just don't magically disappear. So we recognize that there is something going on that side of the roadway. You picture we've pulled a fire engine or ambulance over to the side, and we're standing here watching this, and you know, we get 10 people driving by us. Now, right? It's clear now. I mean, it looks better than it did, right? I know the excuse I always get is, oh, well, this is the only way I know how to get home. I don't know any other way. Yeah, right? I mean, so the fact that the power of this water makes this road look like butter or Play-Doh as it just kind of peels off is impressive to me. So you can see the water is definitely eroding away something on the roadway. And luckily for this video, you can see it happening, right? Because the water line's right at that roadway. What happens if the water was actually 3 feet higher than what it is now, going over the roadway, and you couldn't even see it happening? How do you know that any of that's happening? Uh-huh. Yep. And so you basically have all that water pressure against the roadway, all right? And you'll see what exactly failed here in a second. But all that water's got to go somewhere, and it was channeling through, and it found that weakest link through here. Now I think you can make it again. So basically, yep, culvert fails. I don't know if all those trees going through it, whatever it was, it couldn't keep up with the water demand. So it basically just completely eroded around it. It eroded the street and then everything in and around it. And as silly as it is to say, based on the picture you see on the left, you would think that nobody would actually continue to drive through it. But you can see that somebody decided that they were going to try to Dukes of Hazzard this, and it didn't work out so well for them. But again, you know, the amount of water that you had, and before the water was way up here, right? Now you see the water level down here, so that flooding you know, brought the water level up so much and the power to erode that much is impressive. So we all know those areas in our first due area, or the areas that always flood. We talked about Rock Creek Park, up in 40s area on Georgia Avenue, always floods anytime we get any amount of rain. So we all know these areas are low-lying, and we kind of expect that when these calls come in, this is where these calls are going to be. All right, so what in the world are these people thinking? I think we probably ask this all the time, right? Like, what were you thinking? So I want you to pay close attention to this guy, because I think, especially if you work in 25's area, this is what you deal with on a daily basis.
Copy that. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? God.
This is a new four-wheel drive Hondas. Throw it in reverse, I like it. Reverse is not working.
Forward might actually be a better option.
I just think he didn't drive fast enough. He could have had the momentum to carry him. At least he gave up on reverse.
It's shaped like a submarine, so.
The headlights are on.
Dude, you gotta get out of the car. You gotta get out. Swim.
Oh my God.
Swim. Leave the car. Swim.
What else are you gonna do?
Leave the car. Swim.
Titanic, dude. So if you couldn't hear me, he said, what do I do? What do I do? Stay with the car? Stay with the car? And the reporter guys, that guy's what you're saying. No, you need to leave the car.
Swim.
Come here. Yes, we're here. Yes. Hey, we can hear you.
That's right, we're here live.
You okay? You did. Watch your step, sir. Get out of here. Watch your step. Did you just not think the water was that deep? Yeah, this is what we're thinking. Like, car is under. You're probably got to leave the car.
Hey, what about my wife? Yeah, leave her too.
I can't hear you. We're here on Studemont. You can see this gentleman.
Yep, she's gone.
Hey, Tom, yes. We're on Studemont Street, where this is the latest rescue we've witnessed here live. In fact, we're on Studemont Street, where this...
I mean, that guy had no clue, right? No clue at all. I mean, there's a reporter there. I'm sure, you know, the cameraman, oh, what are these nice people doing in front of this puddle? Should give you some type of clue. I mean, you know, drove right through it. What are you doing, right? So, I don't know if you could see in the beginning, this is another car on the other side that somebody drove through on the other side. That's why they were there, because some idiot has already driven through, right, and has already sunk his car once. Now they're like, oh, there's lots of flooding. These are the conditions. We'll go out there, get some live shots of this vehicle. Great. Not knowing that some other guy from the other end was actually going to come and try to drive through it. Some things other than the car floated pretty well initially, right? Until he opened his door. Something to think about, right? The cars are made kind of tight and compact like that so that they are almost floatable until you change some type of dynamic, in that case opening the door. So he was okay until he opened the door, and as soon as he opened the door, right, just sunk straight down. So the thing to think about is, okay, he's on the scene, what do you do? Hey, you got to get out of the vehicle. What do I do? Swim? Swim, yes, leave the vehicle. He's giving him direction. I think that that guy probably would have drowned in that vehicle if it hadn't been for that reporter. Did that reporter do anything? No. He was probably cussing him under his breath, gave him a couple of directions, but in my opinion saved his life, because that guy needed direction. He needed somebody to tell him to do something. And that might be you guys on the scene. What do I do? Can you swim? Yeah. swim. The vehicle is sinking, you need to swim, right? And sometimes he was able to swim, no big deal. The one thing that I would caution you guys with when you're giving direction to these people, and I don't know if any of you have participated in some of the new recruit class training that they're doing at the end of the class, but they're taking all these guys through a water awareness day where they take them to the pool. And swimming is really not a life skill anymore. Whereas my generation, that was like second nature. Everybody knew how to swim. Now we're finding more and more people don't know how to swim. So luckily for him, he did know how to swim, but you have to realize that some people might not know how to swim, so swimming might not be an option for them. And if this is the case, you know, have some type of flotation ready to go. You know, a throw bag or a PFD or a life ring or something. Anything that you can do to get to him if he can't swim. I don't know, obviously the car sunk to about the roof, right? So it's probably not real deep enough that he probably could have stood up, right? He swam probably a little longer than he needed to. But you should definitely be thinking about those things. The profile of the car as it goes in the water, what happens to it when it changes. You know, if you tell somebody get out of the vehicle, that car's going to sink real quick. You need to be able to figure out what that next step is. Okay, I got them to leave the vehicle, now what? So just keep that in mind. And then obviously I think that this kind of embodies the type of people that we're running, right? No clue, or even, you know, have an idea of what they're doing, but they didn't think it was going to be that bad, just like that guy in the first video. And it's not going to change. This is what we're going to be dealing with over and over and over again until we're blue in the face. So when we talk about like our initial response, you get called for some type of car stuck in the water, water rescue, whatever it may be for these flooding calls. We want to make sure that we're not wearing structural firefighting gear. I will fully admit that in the past, when it rained really hard, that was the first thing I put on was my bunker pants and then a raincoat. Bunker pants keep you dry, the boots are high, you don't have to worry about getting your feet wet, keeps you kind of warm, it makes sense. The problem is firefighting gear, especially once all the air is left out of that, makes them super heavy and makes you sink like an anchor. And I know there are a couple people in the department that have actually experienced having turnout gear on and, you know, falling into a pool or having it weigh them down with that water weight, and you just don't want to have that. So we make sure that if you are anywhere near the water in these flooding calls, even if you're not operational, just to, you know, if you're their support to help the onshore scenario, make sure that you have a PFD on, make sure you don't have any structural firefighting gear, because that's what's going to hurt us the most. And make sure that anytime we do any of this stuff, we want to make sure that we operate in teams of 2. And that pretty much goes with anything water related, because if the 2 of you, if I send 2 of you upstream, hey, upstream spot, let me know if anything's coming my way. And then only one of you goes and he's up and then something happens to him, how do I know what happened? I don't, right? I need that accountability. So we always want to operate in teams of 2. So if something happens to the other person, we know about it. So our zones basically for these incidents, and you can see here, the green zone is going to be your cold zone, 10 feet or greater. That's where we're going to have all the support personnel, anybody that's not going to be doing anything with this call, command, any other witnesses, keep them back off that 10 feet. If you're in the warm zone is going to be from the water's edge to 10 feet out. You need to have a PFD and helmet, and you need to anticipate, even though hopefully won't happen, anticipate falling into the water. And if that's how you treat that warm zone, you should have a PFD, a helmet, and hopefully a throw bag of just for whatever happens in that area. The hot zone is basically in or over the water, and that's going to be your technician level personnel, the swift water boat people, anybody on the Swiftwater Rescue Team that has a certification, their job is to actually get in the water. I would consider anybody that has had the site ops class, rescue tech, whatever you want to call it, with the water portion, where you know how to put a PFD on, you know how to throw a throw bag, you can put a helmet on, you can be that support role right on the shore, ready to go to help with throw bags, upstream spotters, downstream safeties, and really, in my opinion, set the stage for these calls to determine what our next move is going to be. And that's kind of the whole point of this class, is to get you guys thinking about actually what you can do in this scenario if you're not operationally certified to go in the water. Pretty much follows the new SOP as far as what we're supposed to do with your initial on-scene report. It's basically tried to tailor it so that we're not talking different lingo when it comes to firefighting, when it comes to metro calls, rural. It's all the same. We have the same thing. What you're supposed to do when you get on the scene mirrors exactly what you're supposed to do for the new IRP. So you get on the scene, you do everything we do. Confirm. Make sure you know what exactly, where the incident's at, and then, you know, kind of start to paint that picture for the incoming scene, right? Because we all know that these water rescues are not going to happen right at Station 10 or Station 30 or right where these Swiftwater assets are. It's going to be probably the furthest away, and you're going to be on the scene for a while. So you really need to paint that picture of what you have so that we can determine the best way to go. And in my opinion, if you can confirm this incident location and then figure out the people that you have as far as victims, and then the best access. Because I'm not going to know this area as well as you guys are on your first due. You see the car and you're looking at it and they're, you know, 100 feet from you on this end, but if you tell the Swiftwater units or the other units coming on the scene, hey, just go around the block, make 2 right turns, and you'll be literally 20 feet from this car, that's going to be your best access. That's invaluable for us. Because obviously, as closer to the shore on that side, that's where we're going to want to make the rescue or set the stage for whatever we're going to do. Marking the water line, having safeties and spotters. If you can run this call and you can have the water line marked, you can have upstream safeties or upstream spotters, downstream safeties, have everybody along the shoreline in a PFD, and if you can, get a PFD to however many victims are in this car. By the time I get on the scene and I see that, you've done 99% of the work, and the call, in my opinion, is pretty much not an emergency anymore. It's over. Hey, the water line is receding. All right, stand by. We'll wait for the water to go down. No problem. Hey, the water line is pretty much staying the same. All right, we'll make a determination whether or not what we want to do at this point. Hey, the water is rising. Worst case scenario, if we don't get to that person, but he's got a PFD on, how much have we improved the survivability of that person, right? Exponentially so. I would say probably 100%, because now if they do fall in the water, the car starts moving away, but they have a PFD on, even if they can't swim, they'll probably do something, right? And they'll get to a point where at a bend or something will take them to a slower side of the river at some point. They'll probably be wet. They probably won't be happy, but ultimately they'll be alive. And so that's the whole point of this, is if we can get flotation to those people as quick as possible, set the stage up for this rescue, there might not be anything else that needs to be done when I get there. Does that make sense? To mark the water level, pretty much anything at your disposal. I would just ask that you mark it with something that's not floatable, so that if you mark it and then it floats away, we have no idea where it was before. You can use a stick, you know, stick the stick in the ground if it's soft. You can take you know, a halogen bar or some type of heavy piece of something off of the engine, mark it so that we know where that water line is. Just make sure that we keep it where it's at. We don't move it to keep it out of the water line, so that we make sure that when we get on the scene, I can look at that and I can say, okay, you marked the water there, it hasn't moved, it's gone down. All right, we know what. The water's not rising, it's receding, it changes how we're going to operate. I get on the scene, you know, you stuck a stick in the ground and now the water's up a foot onto that stick. Okay, well, the car hasn't floated yet, but the water's rising, so we know that there's something that needs to be done because the water is rising. If there's any witnesses, a lot of times people on the scene, just a quick, hey, do you know what happened? Is there anybody else? Maybe there was more people in the car. Maybe they're a relative. Maybe they know that there was another car that got swept downstream. Whatever, just to get an idea of, hey, I do have a car here. Witnesses say that another car floated down the stream because this is a F-150. That was a Prius. Prius floated first. It's all the way down the stream. We need to send somebody downstream to figure out where that's at. Might not be exactly the call that you thought it was, specifically because conditions were changing. So we make sure that we account for that. And then call for additional resources. The new IRP with the swift water component is going to say that if the water is 18 inches or less and you are operational boat crew, so that's not swift water, but that you've taken the boat class, boat crew class, and you have a boat, you have your upstream safeties, upstream spotters, downstream safeties, you can cancel swift water because it's a shallow water crossing, and you can actually perform the rescue yourself if you have that class. Does that make sense? So it's not a swift water call. We've already established the water's not moving. We know how many calls do we get all at once when this happens, right? We usually get 10 all at the same time, right? How many of those calls are true swift water calls? Maybe one, right? The rest of these are going to be wait, stop. We don't need to do anything. We can do shallow water crossing. We don't need to do that, right? Because the water is going to go down. So again, we just take that into consideration and we make sure that based on, you know, hey, I marked the water line, the water's moving, looks like it's going up. Hey, it sounds like that other call isn't that bad. I need all the swift water guys over here because this is going to be that call. All right, we'll continue on. So, kind of leads us into, you know, kind of showed you some videos, showed you an idea of, you know, what you can do in a scenario, how you would do it. You know, we all kind of think have that like that gut check moment where you're presented with a scenario and, you know, what would I do in that situation? And in this scenario, you watch it play out, I'll kind of explain it at the end. But watch how this situation is handled.
Made things worse.
She's got to be able to climb out the front.
That dude's wife is in the vehicle. I would assume he's trying to rescue her and not kill her.
It didn't take long for police and firefighters to arrive on the scene and quickly wade into the water. Using an axe, a police officer smashed the passenger window, opened the door, and dragged Fitzgerald to safety. The rescue came not a moment too soon, as water covered Fitzgerald's entire body except her chin, mouth, and nose. The 85-year-old remained conscious throughout the ordeal. She is reportedly doing fine at home.
So in this scenario, he's driving this vehicle, his wife's in the passenger seat. There's a parking lot up to the left of the screen here, and he gets out of the vehicle's still in drive. As you can see by the pole that he's holding, this is the this little railing down here. See how it's all rusted out? Didn't hold the vehicle, so the vehicle hit it, went over into the water. Now, just like we saw with that Honda video, right? Vehicle falls in the water, but everything's shut, right? So it's kind of encapsulated, it's floating. He says, again, I'm assuming he's trying to help her and not kill her. He grabs the railing that fell off and he's like, I got to get her out of that vehicle, right? That's the first thing he thinks. So what does he do? He grabs it and he starts bashing in the front windshield. Well, anybody who is in rescue who has ever done any type of auto extrication knows what about the front windshield of a vehicle? Laminated, right? So there's no amount of hitting he's going to do to this to make that easy for her to climb out the front window, right? We all know that we're going to have to go some other method to get her out. So in doing that, did he increase the survivability of her or decrease it? Decreased it, right? Because now as the waves are kind of coming in, now water can get into that front windshield. And you saw when he did that, what ended up happening was as the car sank and she was actually up to here at the roof of the car when that cop came in and actually smashed the side window and pulled her to safety. So, you know, we talk about the cost of just doing something. Like, I get on the scene, I got to do something. We got to make sure that our actions are going to have a direct result into what's going to happen on this call. And in this scenario, you know, you replace him with me and I get on the scene, I'm like, I got to get her out. And I'm just bashing windows and I don't have a plan B or a plan C. And then the car starts sinking. I haven't helped her in that situation. The intention was there to help her, but I haven't helped her. I've made the survivability of her worse. So we got to make sure, you know, again, the public doesn't quite understand exactly how this is going to play out, but we need to be better than I realize, like, okay, this is the scenario I have. This is what I got. What am I going to do to make this better? And sometimes, again, it might be to tell this guy, get back, right? Stay away. Don't get close. You know, we'll help. We're going to do what we can, but, you know, we need you to get back. Is there anybody that, like, you're on the scene of this, you know, it looks like it's an ocean, right? Is there anybody that, you know, she's in the vehicle, you're the first one on the scene, is there anybody that wouldn't go get her in this scenario? Or would you go get her? Thoughts? Yes? No?
To the essence, I mean, that car's going to end up going down right there.
And she's not getting out, right? So somebody's got to do something.
It's not flood water.
It's not flood water. It's not swift water. It's ocean water, right? It's a little bit different.
In between the rocks and the car.
Right. Okay. That's, I think, in my scenario, in my mind, if I get on the scene, you know, I'm going to put a PFD on. All right. He's made this vehicle a lot worse. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to get that lady, even if I'm not certified as a ocean rescuer, right? Hey, call the Coast Guard because it's Coast Guard waters. We'll wait for the frigate to show up, right? Well, she's going to be dead by then, so something has to happen. So I like what you brought up about the rocks, right? It's probably bringing it to shore, so we don't have to worry about it sinking far out. It's probably going to sink right there, but we want to watch, you know. So in this scenario, you see, so that's not where I would have grabbed her from, right? She is on that side, correct? But you got to be really careful because you got the car up against the rock, so you got to be really careful with how you're going to do it. Would have been better to go to the other side. I mean, we can what if all these calls to death, but when you run these scenarios and you're thinking about this and something needs to be done, okay, well, we've determined it's not swift water. We've determined it's not moving water. We've determined that, you know, it's a water call. Hey, do I have a PFD and helmet? Do we have guys with throw bags? You know, can we make this work with what we have? Because the swift water guys are here in 15 minutes. Guess what? Something's got to happen. I would say this is almost a shore-based rescue. Does that make sense? You might get a DOR, probably get a DOR, but you'll also get an award too for saving their life. So, but all joking aside, these are things that I want you to think about on these calls because you're going to be the first one on the scene and you're going to have to paint that picture as to what we have, what's coming, and what you need.
Make things work.
So, again, we talked about all this, you know, and, you know, think about this stuff when you get on the scene. Is there an imminent emergency? Is it an imminent emergency for the person in the car or for the people on land? Both? You know, who knows? Depends on the scenario. You know, do we have a duty to act? I think in that scenario, the police and firefighters that were on the scene did have a duty to act. He made the situation worse. He kind of forced their hand to make a rescue quickly, and something needed to be done quick. So we think about strategies and tactics and the actions, right? So we make sure that, you know, we don't just have everybody down there, hey, is there anybody here who's water certified? Oh yeah, I'm water certified. Well, then maybe he's probably the one that should go in and get that person. Even if you don't have the right number of personnel, he makes the most sense, right? Put the right people in the right position. And then again, you know, stabilizing the scene, making sure that if there are people on the shore, get them back so that they're not involved. And that comes back to the risk benefit, right? We think about, you know, what's the viability of the victim? You know, is it still a rescue? I don't know if anybody picked up on that first video for the Lowhead Dam, but the guy who initially talks, he called that a body rescue, right? In my opinion, that's not a rescue, it's a recovery, right? But in his opinion, he used the word rescue. We have a different mindset if I say, hey, let's go in and rescue that guy, as opposed to this is a body recovery. There's a difference. There's a different mindset. There's a different, you know, hey, you know, all units level 1 stage, all units stage at the hydrant, respond routine. All these things bring us down from that high of building fire or whatever the call type is, right? It changes how we kind of behave. And in some instances that's good because we don't want to risk a lot to save nothing. But we want to risk a lot to save a lot, and that needs to be a part of this risk benefit rescue recovery idea. So make sure that you know, we understand what's going on. You know, think about those hazards, environmental factors. Goes back to that FDNY video, right? That dude that was in that Gumby suit did not think about what happens when I jump in this ice water, how cold it's going to be. And you can tell exactly by his actions because he stopped trying to rescue a kid and went to, I need to get out of this. I'm uncomfortable. I just want to get out of this. And so we need to think about that, you know. And then, you know, now he's hypothermic. All those, how many of those FDNY guys, and I don't know the answer to this, but, you know, we saw them falling through the ice, right? We saw them getting wet. How many of those guys went home hypothermic that day? I don't know. Maybe 2, 3. But in that instance, we've added more and more people to the problem rather than the solution. Training and experience of on-scene personnel. Again, it just goes back to, if you have somebody who's swift water, if, you know, Caleb's working on your shift and, you know, hey, you're swift water, do you have your gear? Yeah, throw it on the rig. You know, if he's the only one that's there, you can definitely help him do some scope of a rescue depending on what you have, if you have the personnel. And then what other resources. So basic terminology, if the river is flowing from the front of the room to the back of the room, that's how we always orient ourselves. So if I'm looking downstream, my right side is river right, my left side is river left. If I'm facing upstream, this is still river right and this is still river left. So your orientation is always downstream. So if you hear the terminology, or, you know, you say, hey, we're on scene, water's flowing over here, we're on river left, but if you go, you know, a different way, you guys can get to river right, and river right is actually where the vehicle is closest to. So just kind of that terminology, we'll understand that facing downstream, river right is always to your right. Does that make sense? Pretty much going back to, you know, when you get on the scene, are they in immediate distress? I already kind of told you, if ECC gets the right information, if they are in distress, i.e. the water's rising, they're going to be on the roof of their vehicle. So we know that there's a potential for a call. If we get on the scene and there isn't anybody, there's somebody in the vehicle, they haven't gotten out yet, either they're A, not following directions, or B, maybe they're not in as much of an emergency. I think anybody who's run a rollover or a vehicle that's been semi-totaled, if a person can get out of that vehicle, they'll get out, right? Sometimes squeeze out of areas that you wouldn't even think humanly possible, but they want to get out of that situation. So typically, if someone's still trapped in a vehicle, it's because they can't get out, right? So same thing with this. If somebody's able to get away from the water or get out of that scenario, they're gonna get as far away from it as possible. And if that's the roof, 9 times out of 10, that's probably where they'll be. If you can't see a victim, or you're not really sure, you just see a car, then we're going to have to recon it, right? Sometimes this happens late at night. The weather's really bad. Who knows? Try to get a floodlight or a flashlight. See if you can find anybody in the vehicle. Look for those kind of contextual clues to give you an idea if, is there somebody else there? Is the vehicle marked? You can call ECC and say, hey, we're on the scene. I don't see anybody. Did you run this call earlier? And hopefully the people that were there last have marked the car in some way to let them know that they were or weren't there. So it goes back to the IRP with your SIR. Basically just kind of, what do you have? What do we need as far as, how many people are in the water? How many people are in the car? Like we said, is there something else going on? Is the water moving? How fast is it going? You can determine all this stuff, and it's going to make the difference between whether or not this is a true swift water call or this is a flooding, water's going to go down, we don't need swift water assets because I've marked the water line, and in the 10 minutes that we've been here to set the scene, the water's already gone down tenfold, and it looks just like that first video with the tower, and there's no water there at all. This dude's going to get ready to walk out here. When you set up this scene, if you can get 2 people upstream to spot, 2 people downstream as safeties for whatever happens, even if you can't do anything else, if it looks like, we go back to that white car tumbling. If that person was on the roof and that car starts to tumble, that person's getting thrown in the water, right? Crappy situation, yes. But if we've got 2 or 3 or 4 or however many people you can spare downstream with throw bags, and you have a throw bag and that person, is drowning, but they can at least maybe make it, and you can get a throw bag to them and you grab them, you pull them in, rescue's done, right? So set the stage up for that plan B. Yes, this is where the car is. What's going to happen down the road? Do I need to do something extra? The biggest thing, if you do have a witness or multiple witnesses, is make sure you separate them. Depends on the people, but if you get 2 witnesses together, they'll kind of talk amongst themselves, and rather than give you the story of what they saw, they'll give you the same story to try to make the same sense. So if you do have any types of witnesses, make sure that you're trying to figure out what's going on in this scenario, what happened, separate them, talk to them individually just to make sure you get their story of what happened. So something that I don't think a lot of us really think about, but consider all these drownings, consider it a crime scene. Just keep it in the back of your mind. Probably not, but in the end, if it does end up being a crime scene, how we handle that scene can make a huge difference. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. It's not always that way, but I know on the river team we do tend to run suicides. We don't know the mindset of these people. Maybe they did try to drive in the water because they wanted to kill themselves. So keep that in the back of your mind, especially if I know for the Swiftwater guys, if we do make contact with a victim, if they are suicidal, right? Think of an EMS call. We treat suicidal people differently, right? Because if they want to hurt themselves, they certainly don't care about us. So we kind of got to think about that as well. So when we talk about your certification levels, the awareness level is going to be basically somebody who understands water, doesn't have really has looked at some slides, and that's pretty much it. Understands that water is dangerous, stays away. They're away from, 10 feet further, They're not involved. They're not putting on PFDs. They're not doing throw bag stuff. This is the awareness people. Kind of your, you know, basically operating in that cold zone. Your operations level, which is where I would consider you guys that have had the swift water component for the rescue tech class site ops. You know how to put a PFD on, you know how to do throw bags, and you understand the dangers of water, and you can operate on that line right at the water's edge in 10 feet. And then obviously your operations or your technician level, which would be the swift water guys. You're going into the water, actually making, you know, doing the swimming in the actual water itself. But this also translates to your boat crews and your boat operators. If it is determined that it is just a still water call, it's not moving and it's just flooded and it's less than 18 inches, then technician level skill for those guys is now going to be, hey, do a shallow water crossing and just go get that guy, remove him from his vehicle and come back. So that's kind of a change in how we've been doing things here lately. So we all talk about like your water rescue sequence, right? We always talk about like reach, yell, throw, row, go, right? We always think of, but a lot of times when we get on the scene and we see somebody that needs our help, we just go right to go. And it's important to remember that, you know, our operations and tactics and how we do this shouldn't change just because there's now somebody that needs our help. We should start with, you know, yell, reach, throw, row, go, helo. So if I get on the scene, you get on the scene, the first thing we should do is make contact. That's why we say yell. Sometimes, like that guy in the Honda, right? He needed somebody to yell, right? He needed somebody to tell him, you need to do something because your car is getting ready to sink. That yelling, that contact made it so that he was able to follow directions and get out. And that might be the only thing you need to do. Your next progression, reach. Do you have something? Do you have a long pike pole that, you know, you can hand him the handle and he can grab it and you can pull him in? Throw. Do we have a PFD? Do we have throw bags with the PFDs and helmets that we can throw to them and we can get them that way? So our progression is never going to change. If I get on the scene and you guys are there, I might transition all the way to go get them, but hopefully that's only because you've already done the yell, reach, and throw, and so we're already to the next phase. We want to make sure that we don't go from straight on the scene to let's go get them. You know, if there's an easier way to do it, throwing is perfectly acceptable, and I might do that. I might get on the scene and be like, throw him a throw bag, put a PFD on it, put the PFD on. All right, sir, you're going to get wet. Hang on. Pull him in. That's it, right? Doesn't have to be super technical, and we'll go over that outside. The biggest thing is coach them to never give up. We took a video out because it was kind of long, but it was a video of a police officer, and there was a kid on the ice, and the whole time, the only thing this lady did was basically talk to this kid and yell at him the whole entire time. You're not going to give up. You're going to live. You're going to be fine. Truly emotional for her. She didn't do anything else. She didn't rescue him. She had no part of anything else. And by and large, she was the reason why this kid survived, was because she gave him the hope and the will to live. And so she was crucial to this rescue just as much as the guys that went out and got her. And sometimes if that's all you do is make contact with the person, try to calm them down, let them know that we're going to do something, we're going to try to get the right people in the right situation to make their day better, you know, then that might be all that you need to actually give them that hope to survive. So I talked about reach with pike poles. If you carry shepherd hooks on the towers, you can certainly use that. The biggest thing to remember is that if with a throw bag or a pike pole or anything that you're using to try to make contact with this patient, if it ends up in the water, if the patient ends up with the water with the throw bag or with the pike pole or whatever they're holding onto, there's going to be a reaction, right? There's going to be a force that's going to want to pull you towards them, and you're going to have to compensate for it. So it makes sense, like you can see the guy lying down to prevent him from getting pulled in, or you can see the kid kind of, you know, setting his feet ready for that pull, and we'll kind of show you that out back to, you know, anticipate being pulled in a little bit, so that if and when that does happen, that you don't get pulled in with it. Because if you're not careful, depending on the current, the people, if that happens and they go in and you're trying to hold it and you're not accounting for that force, you'll get pulled in right with them. So I think we all understand the risk versus benefit of driving fire apparatus into the water. We've seen the roadways. We know, we know that bad things happen when you take this apparatus, especially in high water. The equipment that's in it, with the exception of the freight liners that go in service the next day after you flood them, because they'll never die. All the other apparatus it definitely damages them. So we want to make sure that reaching with a fire apparatus, driving fire apparatus through water is not what we're going to do. We need to find another way to do it, because you don't want to end up like these guys. And then, once you get to this point, I mean, obviously there's a flooding emergency. There's lots of calls coming out, right? So, now we've transitioned from saving, citizens to now saving our own. And now we put an engine out of service. Now these guys can't respond on more calls. It's just bad for business. So don't do it. So with that being said, we'll watch this video and you can kind of tell me what you think. He's got his PFD on, right? So he was thinking. No DOR for the life vest. That's true. Why don't you slow down so I can see? So, again, what are the risks of doing this, right? I mean,
how high up is the engine?
Well, so you can see this is a tower ladder, right? You can see the bucket. So,
looks like a pierce.
Yeah.
So it could be, well, so the pierce
have it on the side, right? So the intake's on the side, probably at about water level. So the only thing that's helping him is his forward movement, right? As soon as he changes course or the current changes, right? He drives through a side current and then it hits the side, then you're done, right? Where's he going? Does he have to get back through this? What's the risk versus benefit of this? And I would say you're risking way too much for nothing. Why do we need a tower? And again, I don't know what call they were running to. I don't know the background of this, but I can't think of any scenario where this makes sense to me.
They're running a house fire because the guy lit his house on fire to get that flood insurance.
Possibly. I mean, they have video of guys down in Texas diving to turn hydrants on so they can put houses that were on fire surrounded by water out, right? What sense does that make? House is going to burn. House is already flooded. It's not going to burn anywhere else, right? What's the risk versus benefit of doing stuff like that? And we really got to think about that. So again, it's bad for business. Don't do it. We have boats. We have personnel in these scenarios. We have plenty of boats in this county to take care of these flooding calls. Let's put people in the right place and get the right equipment and get the job done right without ruining equipment. I mean, think about all of the equipment that's along, the bottom side of that tower now, that all the saws that have water in them, I mean, those things are never going to run right again. So think about what you're doing. So in a perfect world, if we get dispatched for a swift water call and minus these guys over here, but you got 4 people in this car on this roof and all 4 of them have PFDs, and when we get on the scene, you've made my job super easy, because we've increased the survivability of these people, in my opinion, 100%, because now if they fall into the water, they've got some type of rope, right, that they're hanging on to, and it'll probably just swing them right to shore. Even if they can't hold onto the rope, for whatever reason, something weird happens, they got flotation on. At some point in time, we'll be able to pick them up somewhere because they're not going to sink. And so it's, in my opinion, invaluable if you guys can get on the scene, find the best access point, and get the people that are in the car that are trapped, get them flotation, and then we'll work out from there. We'll see what's going on. After the water line's marked, you know, and you do this, go back and look at the water line. Hasn't gone down? All right, well, we're still good. It's gone up? Okay. Hey, maybe we need to speed things up, but they've now got flotation and they've got a way to maybe get to shore if they have to in an emergency, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Does that make sense? I mean, all 4 of these guys are pretty much, yeah, they're going to get a little wet, but the survivability has been greatly increased, and all with a throw bag. And 9 times out of 10, this is probably the first thing that I'm going to do when I get on the scene. So if it's not done by you guys, it's going to be done by us when we get there to get them that flotation. So if something goes wrong during our rescue, the same thing. They'll at least float and they'll be alive. So throwable objects, couple of things. Anybody that's ever thrown a life ring, they're kind of hard. So I caution. The nice thing about the life ring is that it is a floatable object when you do throw it, right? But just be careful that the person knows that you're throwing, and we'll talk about it out back. Whenever you throw something, you'll just yell rope or something to get their attention. Because the last thing you want to do is throw a life ring to somebody that's on a car, have them not pay attention, hit them in the head, knock them off, and now we've made the situation worse because they're floating downstream. PFDs, I would argue, are throwable. I'll let you throw one. We'll see how far you can get it. But I would argue the best thing to do if you have a throw bag is to take the throw bag, throw the throw bag because you can get the most distance out of the throw bag, tie a PFD to the throw bag, tie another throw bag, and then hand over hand out to the person. That way you can get the most distance. You can probably only throw a PFD about 15, 20 feet, especially depending on the weather, whereas you can get a throw bag, whatever the length of the throw bag is, 50 to 75 feet. These are the 2 different types of PFDs you're going to find. You notice the one on the right has like a buckle. These are the ones that the Swiftwater guys carry, and the reason why we have the buckle is for us to tether ourselves. Anytime you're in any type of water, you don't want to tie yourself to anything, or if you do, you want it to be quick release. So that's our way around it. We take this tether, we quick release, and then if we get caught into something and we're in the water, we can actually blow out that strap and it lets go of the line and we can float safely to shore. The PFDs that you guys have should not have these, although it's kind of been up to the corporations here of late as to what they purchase, so we found that a lot of them do have the blowout strap. We'll show you how to put it on and weave it correctly, but that's a technician level skill, and so no part of your scenario should ever be, oh hey, I'm going to tie something to this blowout strap and we'll do something. That should be something left to the Swiftwater guys. So we talked about yell, reach, throw. You know, you got there and it didn't work. What do we do now? And, you know, if your awareness or operations and you don't have any other ability to do anything, then you shouldn't enter the water. If if you have the extra training, if you found somebody like Caleb or a couple of Swiftwater guys that have the equipment and the gear, and you can formulate something and something needs to happen right then, they have the training, then you can do it. And it just goes back to, if you know how to use the equipment, if you have the skills to do it and you have the personnel to do it, then do it. If you don't, then don't. Find some other way to do it. Find a better option. Make sure that you don't enter the water in desperation to do something. Going back to that one call. Hey, there's people on the shore. I don't think there's anything I can do for that one car, but I certainly can help those people on the shore. Get back, do something else. Hey, get away. Don't go near the water. Don't try to do anything. You know, we'll do something else so that they don't end up in the same position. So, you know, think about that. What are we bringing to the table when we get on the scene? How are we going to make this better? We want to make sure that, yes, I mean, we're all doing this job because we have compassion to try to help people, but we want to make sure that we don't do anything just out of compassion and we come throw everything else to the wind and be like, I got to save that person because I got to save that person. We got to think about what we're doing. We have to have that plan A, plan B, plan C, and think about it. If I start with plan A and plan A doesn't work, what's plan B going to be? What's plan C going to be? How am I going to recover the mission based on my actions? So if this didn't work, then what, right? And like I said, if your plan is to get those people flotation for survivability, then plan B and C, recovery might be different, but the survivability is going to be exponential because of that. So do I have the resources to make the rescue? And that just depends on the day-to-days for the shift, you know, knowing your people, knowing who's there. Take a look at the Swiftwater roster. If you're an officer, find out, you know, bordering, you know, what's being staffed today. Do we have people that have boats? You know, well, who's coming? And it's just about knowing your resources and knowing what you have available to you. You know, if you're working at 40 and you know that there's a boat crew at 25 that day, hey, you know, for your A shift, Jerry Smith is a great Swiftwater guy. I know he's coming. He's a great asset to use. If you got something emergent, he's definitely a technician level person. He can do it. Set the stage up for that. So, and I would say for anything that we run, any of these types of calls, with number 4, like if you think, will my actions add value to the situation? And I would say that if your actions, if the answer to that is anything other than yes, then find something different. Find something different to do, because if it's not going to add value to the situation, it's just going to make things worse, then it's not worth it. Come up with something else. Reevaluate the plan and do something different. So, and this goes back to if the victim doesn't have a time constraint, why do we impose one on him? I'm stuck in the water. Okay. Is the water rising? No. Was it a quick storm that came through? Yeah. Is the water probably going to recede in 30, 40 minutes? Yes. Okay. Why do we need to operationally walk out there, put that guy in a raft, keep his feet dry, grab his computer, and get him to where he needs to be when he could just sit in that car for 40 minutes and be inconvenienced? Yeah, we're inconvenienced too, right? We want to go back. We don't want to be wet. But why are we imposing a time constraint on him when there isn't one? And that's something, you know, seems like a routine call. Okay, let's go out there. Oh, I don't have a walking stick. Okay, no big deal. And you walk out, and the next thing you know, you fall through a manhole cover, right? Why did we impose something on this guy when we should have just let him sit there and wait? So we need to be thinking about that stuff. So we all know that a calculated risk is part of our job, right? But there's no utility in dying for people that are already dead, i.e. that one car rolling over end, you know. Hey, just keep sending people, you know, just like the first Low-Head Dam. Oh, we'll just keep sending boats. You know what? Those dudes died for no reason. The dude was already dead. Yes, it's tragic, but there's no utility in dying for a body. I'm pretty sure this isn't accidental immersion, but you can see the fire hydrant back behind his head. I'm assuming that it's been knocked off and he's trying to either shut it down, or I don't know what he's trying to do. Probably something really dumb. But in either case, the possibility of accidental immersion is there, and I would say that if you put a PFD and helmet on and you're within 10 feet of the water, expect to get wet, expect to fall in, and think about, with whatever happens, plan on getting wet. So if you have that mindset, then when it happens, you won't be surprised and you'll be ready for it, as opposed to, oh, I'm not going to get in the water, no big deal. And then when it happens, you're kind of reacting. You want to make sure that you're prepared for that when it happens. So make sure that you have a PFD and helmet whenever you're within 10 feet of the water line. Again, this goes back to you got 4 people on your engine and 2 of the people can't swim. Don't put those people in PFDs and helmets. Cold zone, see you by, maybe send them upstream as spotters. They can be 10 feet away from the water with a radio and tell you what's coming downstream. That's a great job for those people. Maybe interviewing witnesses, something away from the operational side of things. So the other question is, we talked about getting PFDs to these people. How many PFDs do we carry on Apparatus? Enough for us, right? So we don't have a lot of extras. Now the Swiftwater guys do. We do have some on the boats, but for you guys, first responders on the scene, you show up on an engine, there's 2 people trapped, in a car in floodwater, and you need to try to get flotation to them. Well, you only have 4 PFDs. So you really want to try to get at least 2 PFDs to those people in the water. So 2 people are not going to get PFDs for this call. Keep those people back. If 2 of those people can't swim, great. Guess where your PFDs are going. As long as they're not within that 10-foot area, you're golden. So use those resources. As more units show up, you can use PFDs from the trucks, from the squads, and build it out. But initially, try to work out the people that are going to be there. Make sure you have the right people in the right spot. And if they don't know how to swim, don't let them engage within 10 feet of the water. So I'm sure we'll all recognize where this is at.
All right, Tim, thank you. There is a creek in Montgomery County that regularly floods and flows over a county road. Locals know that it never gets that deep, and even though it's flooded, they cross it anyway. As Mike Shue reports, that kind of thinking got 3 teenagers in trouble.
This is the place in Montgomery County where the road disappears into the water. No bridge, no kidding. But as we see in these fire department pictures, 3 teens tried the crossing on Monday night. Though iced over, their Honda fell through, got stuck, and now you know why there are fire department pictures and videos. They used a boat to rescue the trio from this big dirty slushy, the 10-degree air putting them all at risk. The county isn't even thinking about closing the road. In fact, since then, the ice has refrozen, the road is open, apparently strong enough to hold this 3-ton pickup. It's driven by a man named Sebastian.
Hasn't been this frozen for a while.
3-ton pickup?
But watch, he tempts the weather gods.
Everything's true on the news.
They win. At least for a moment. Back and forth. Perhaps not wanting to come back to the camera to explain what happened, he eventually bust free. But had that been a puny little silver sedan, you may have seen another rescue in the middle of the day. For WJZ, I'm Mike Shue.
Montgomery County says they're not considering closing West Old Baltimore Road at 10 Mile Creek, nor building a bridge.
So, right, it happens all the time. We know that creek, we know that road. Tower 35 does very well. But we want to make sure that, we understand that at certain times there's water there, sometimes there isn't, but people are still going to drive over it anyways. I mean, in front of the cameras, just like we've seen, and we need to be prepared for that and expect that that's going to happen. Not be surprised when we do run those calls. So one of the last scenarios I have for you guys, video-wise, is it's more of an ice rescue scenario, but I think it plays key into the chaos of the scene, how it starts pretty small and it gets worse and worse and worse. And start thinking about, maybe about 2 or 3 minutes into this, you showing up on the scene and how you would handle the situation when you get on the scene and, you don't have really any equipment, but you're the first one there and people are going to look to you for directions. think about what you would do here.
That's seriously not even funny. No, it's not. Oh, just like it. You can't swim. You guys, the scandal laugh is good. Somebody get a branch. Oh, it's two. Okay, you guys,
give me the rope from under the seat.
Under the seat. Now, right there.
Inner tube, right? That's a good idea.
It's okay. I think he's going to be okay.
See everybody's walking down to see what's going on. Kids hanging out right next to him. All right, so we're only about 2 minutes into this, right? And now we've got all these people on the scene. Everybody's congregating to where this is happening, right? First person to fall in right here still is the only one that really doesn't have flotation. I don't know if anybody heard them say, oh, she can't swim. I don't know if it's just the way that they were moving that they thought that, or they really knew that she can't swim, but intention was to try to help that person. That was the only person at the time that needed help. And now what happens? Now we're rescuing other people. More people are congregating. We got kids on the ice. It's now chaotic. There is zero control over this scene right now. And everybody is just thinking, I got to do something, I got to do something, I got to do something. People need help, I got to do something. And we're just making the situation worse and worse and worse.
Oh, shit. Now that road. It's cracking right there. I think it's okay. Mike Jackson. Ask him if he's okay. See, why isn't he getting up? He's. The other kid's gonna do it. This guy got out of bed over there. He's got more energy at least to get him going. Throw the rope out. Lasso. Pull him in. Oh my.
How much grip do you have on the ice?
Now the guy's interested in saving himself.
Grab it! Grab it!
Everybody see that guy hit at the back right here?
Grab it! Grab it!
So that person's probably a head trauma, right? So everybody survived. Nobody died. So it worked out okay, right? But the chaos of this scene, how far away was she from land over here, right? Compared to all the way up here, right? So she falls in and immediately turns around, panics, and starts heading back in that direction, right? I think it's a common human reaction. You look at, you know, all these studies like the Station nightclub, like everybody tried to exit the way they entered. Human behavior, we're familiar with how we entered the building. 9 times out of 10, we will exit the same way we entered. And I think with the ice and everything else, you're not thinking clearly, and it's easy to say, oh, well, I'm right there. I would just swim to shore. It doesn't even look like there's any ice over on that side. The sun probably is over on that side, which is why it was water, and she probably could have just climbed. That's where everybody else was at. Why in the world did she not go back in that direction? Everybody tried to pull them back over the ice. Nobody tried to pull them in that direction. And so, you know, the thought process of these people, you know, just civilians, just wanting to help out, you know, what would you do in that scenario with all those people? You show up on the scene with, you know, all these people on the ice. What are you going to do?
Get them off of there.
Yeah, right? Everybody.
Try to.
Everybody get off the ice, you know, and this is something where you might have to be a little bit of an a-hole, right? I mean, because you'd be like, oh, please, sir, can you please, like, you're going to have to yell at them. And if, you know, if that's my daughter and I'm a civilian, a lot of yelling and being nice is probably still not going to get me off the ice. So you have to think about that. So I mean, these are all family members. They're, you know, they're trying to help out, but you're making it worse, and you have to be forceful enough to let them know that they are making it worse, and somehow get into their head, get off the ice. You know, that person at the very end running down, I need to help. You know, maybe that was their kid. Now they're knocked unconscious. You know, all could be prevented if we just got everybody off the ice. So
you get there and use your air horn, shock them,
Mm-hmm.
get on the intercom. Get somebody, because they seemed like they were Spanish, get somebody who speaks the language, tell them to get off the ice.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and I think that videos like this are good to watch and just think about, like, what would I do when I get on the scene? Because the scenes are going to be chaotic like that, and the focus is 100% definitely on getting those people out of the water. But us as professionals, we got to see the big picture, and we got to see, you know, if those three people start pulling that guy in, they're going to fall through. I got to get those people off. We got to figure out a better way to work, because this is not working for them at all. Does that make sense? So, and we talked about that. So if their best efforts are failing, we got to do something different. And I think we do. I think we have the ability to look at it from a more you know, we deal with these emergencies all the time, so we have a little better idea of what to do, and we kind of see the big picture rather than focus on everything else. So, talk about lessons learned. Was anybody on this call? 3 kids in the ice. One was actually hanging on the ice shelf. One made it back to shore, and then one actually went under. The rescue squad got dispatched. They got on the scene. The guys on the squad, you know, you have a live victim, somebody hanging on. You know that he needs help. They put on their the dry suit, but the problem is that they didn't have any liner on underneath it. So anybody who's ever put a dry suit on knows that all that dry suit does is keep you dry. It does not insulate you. And so what ended up happening was they went in, they pulled the one kid out, continued to search for the one kid that went under, and these dudes were severely hypothermic by the time they got out, and by the time this was done. We sent all of them to the hospital. They were okay, but they had been exposed to this cold water for a long amount of time. And you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, you know, the decisions that were made, what it boils down to is that if these guys had actually, you know, we knew it was on there, but nobody really ever showed us how to put it on. Nobody really told us that we needed any type of layering underneath it to keep our body insulated. And so, you know, it's kind of keeps coming back to this. Nobody ever told us what we could or couldn't do. And so, you know, that's kind of one of the lessons learned with this is like, look, this is what you can do. This is the stuff that's on here's the PFDs, here are the helmets. We'll show you how to size them. We'll show you how to put them on. We'll show you how to throw a throw bag, and actually get you guys engaged so that, you know, when you get on the scenes of these, it's not, oh, I wasn't shown how to do it. It's like, I know my equipment, I know what I can do, I know my personnel, and this is why we did it. Basically, you know, just making sure that we have the proper training. We know what we can do with what we got. And then the River Road water main break. Pretty much the lesson learned with this one is it was probably the first time where we had a number of victims that were relatively safe We didn't know whether or not the water main was, how big it was until after the fact, but the concern was that they were safe in their vehicles, but it was a really, really cold December day. And the biggest problem with this call was that the people that were in the cars, we couldn't shelter them in place because they were severely hypothermic from all the water. And the water was actually freezing inside the vehicle, and so the people were really cold. And so it kind of forced us to do something. When the WSSC got there, the guy said that it would take like an hour to actually shut this this pipe down. So it said it was a 66-inch water main. The size of the hole that was actually coming out of this water main was the size of a basketball. So you figure a 66-inch main, which is big enough for somebody to walk through, only had a hole the size of a basketball that was producing all of this water. And the biggest lesson learned from this one was basically we made rescues, but we had plan A, plan B, plan C, and we actually, I think, used plan D to, we used A to rescue a few, B to rescue a few, C to rescue a few, and D to pull Mitchell off of the boat by helicopter when we couldn't recover the boat. So again, when we run these calls, think about the plan A, plan B, and what's going to happen if I do this. What's going to happen next? How can I recover based on that? I kind of touched on this a little bit. There's more classes. Like I said, if you want to be able to do more on these flooding calls, if it's a still water, you want to do a walkout, you can take the surface water boat crew class, the surface water boat operator class, which will give you the ability in the new IRP to actually do a shallow water crossing and be kind of an operational boat crew on these calls. And then send the Swiftwater guys, hey, this is a operational boat crew can do this. I got the personnel, we're good. You guys can go home or go to the other call that sounds like it's worse. The other real purpose of this insert was just to get you guys to see what you have in your bags. What we always just take out, unless it's flooding, then put them back on the units when it rains, and that's it. So the idea is, how many of you, other than the site ops class, have really taken the time to look at the PFDs that you carry on the unit, make sure that it's sized right, make sure that you know how to fit it properly, and go over like the road bag. So what I'd like to see you guys do from here on out is just kind of on a monthly basis, break the seal, pull the PFDs out, and make sure that everything's in working order. Make sure you have the right PFD. Make sure that it's sized properly to whichever one you're going to wear. And so, depending on who had it last, who checked it out, if it's ever been worn before, the first thing you want to do with any of these is to make sure that you open the PFD all the way. Take all the straps, make it as big as possible. That way the person that wore it before you that was tiny, right, it'll be easier for you to put on. When you put the PFD on, you want to make sure. So usually, like what we talk about with like the buddy system, right, we should always have a partner. So when you loosen everything up, you can have your buddy have your buddy basically make sure everything's tight, he can tighten everything for you on both sides. And then when you're done with him, basically do the same thing, have him do the same thing for you. Alright, so the idea behind this, you want it tight enough, especially this strap down here, so that it doesn't ride up. Because if this rides up on him in the water, this is going to be your water line. The more comfortable you are with this sitting further down on your chest, the higher your head's going to be out of the water, the better you're going to be as you go through whatever hydrology you're going through and not sucking down water. So the tighter this is, I like to say a little bit uncomfortable will make you comfortable in the water. Does that make sense? So Making sure that it's tight, you can kind of just give a tug. As long as it doesn't move up, you know you're good to go. This one has that blowout strap I was telling you about. The whole idea behind this strap, this is for the technician level guys on the Swift water team, is to take this belt and he weaves it through the buckle and then through that strap and then through the buckle. And the reason why this is a technician level skill is because on the back side, there would be a ring here, and we would attach this ring to a rope, and then what I can do is I can then send him, hey, someone's going to come if he's downstream safety. As a victim comes down the water, I can send him in and he can swim. Now the problem with tying yourself to something is if you do get stuck and this gets caught, the water is going to bring you down below the surface and you basically be stuck and drown. So in any scenario on the swift water side of things, we want to be able to quickly release. So if he gets stuck in this scenario, he's going to pull his cord and then he slides free and then he'll just swim to shore. Alright? It's a technician level skill. Probably 20 years from now we'll get away from having these on all the apparatus, but some of you might have this PFD. If you do, you don't have to worry about strapping this. Like you can leave it hanging like this, it's not a big deal. The important thing is to make sure you have the zipper and you have all the side pieces tight. If you want to, you can take this and just remove the buckle. This makes you feel better. Just keep it out of the way. But again, it's a technician level skill that you guys who are not technician level certified to do anything, you don't need to worry about it. So the other style is going to be this style where you have like either a zipper or just the clips. You basically, same thing, loosen it up and then tighten it down. This is a different style PFD, but this one is the one that doesn't have that strap across the center. So my other recommendation is if there is you get in and you're like, hey, we're going to get lots of rain today, there's going to be flooding call, get this stuff out first. Open it all up, size it, pick out one for you so that you know when you get on the scene of this call, when you have somebody that's on the scene and you need to help them, that you're not fiddling around with trying to put this on, figuring out where this is at, and it's, not sized correctly. Get all that stuff done before the call, just like we do with our gear and everything else. Make sure it's ready to go, so that when we get on the scene, we're ready to go, we're not fumbling around. Any questions as far as PFD? Helmets, kind of two different styles. They're all the same. The biggest thing with the helmets you'll see is the holes in it, right? So it's the one thing that we don't have in the fire helmets. So I know the fire helmet basically alleviates the rain going down the back of your neck and it kind of protects your head, right? But the problem with the fire helmet is if you were to fall in the water, there's nowhere for that water to go and it could yank your neck back if you're in the water. So the reason for the holes is so the water, if you're in the water, will pass through the holes and it won't jerk your neck. So very important, don't wear fire helmets, put your PFD on, and if you have, put one of these water helmets on. There should be one helmet for every PFD that you have. Any questions on the helmets? So the last thing we'll talk about here is the throw bag. And in my opinion, kind of like what I said before in class, was if you guys can be skilled with these throw bags, and you can get some type of flotation to wherever the victim is, you've done 99% of the work on these calls. So get the throw bags out. We'll show you how to throw them here in a minute, but practice with them, once a month when you're out just checking inventory, making sure you have everything, get these out, and just do a couple of throw bag drills just so you can get accurate. Have somebody, run across a parking lot and see how accurate you can throw to them. There's a couple of ways you can throw these throw bags. You can either basically take a little bit of the throw bag out, make sure that you open it, bag up all the way so that it pays out. You basically just toss it underhand. All right. The other way you can do it is is you can do a sidearm, kind of a sidearm throw, and then if you have, we'll look and see, we have a smaller one. The 50-foot ones are the ones that are a little bit shorter than this one. You can actually take and throw overhand like a football. It just comes with practice. Try all three to see which one you like, and just get good at one, all three, or just find whichever one you like. The nice thing about the underhand is that it's pretty easy to toss. The biggest issue is that if you have, like if we were doing it inside, if you have trees and stuff, you throw it up and you let go too high, it's a nice arch, but it'll hit a tree and get caught, and then the rope's no good. So when you're throwing to somebody, anytime you're going to throw an object, whether it's this, a PFD, or a life ring, you always want to say something to get their attention. So when we say in the river world, we say rope. So before I throw, I say rope, so that he knows something's coming. All right. Hopefully he should hold his hands up in the air. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get it directly over his head. That's the best case scenario to where he can grab it. The worst thing you want to do is actually miss in front of him. If I miss in front of him going downstream, this is polypropylene rope. It floats. What happens, the surface area of this rope will actually travel faster than the person that's in the water. It seems kind of counterintuitive. You don't want to throw it in front of them. You actually want to miss behind them. So worst case scenario, if I am aiming towards him and I will say downstream is this way, I want to make sure I hit him on the upstream side, because the rope will actually come down and float around him and you can grab it. Does that make sense? It seems a little weird, but if you're going to miss, make sure you miss behind him, because the rope will actually travel faster than the person. So as I throw, I say rope, underhand, right to him. Alright, now he's going to grab him. There's really no big direction as far as what that person's going to do. There's a certain way to grab the rope. The victim's not going to really know that. They're just going to want to get out of the water. The biggest thing for you to remember now, we talked about that reaction, right? If I stand here like this and I hold the rope, what's going to happen when he pulls, right? I'm going to fall in. So I need to prepare myself. Now, if I just do this and I'm holding, it's kind of one-to-one, he can still pull me in, right? So what we say to do to give yourself a little extra help in holding the person staying on the shore, you want to take this rope after I throw it, put it around my back on the downstream side. All right. So going in this direction, I'm holding it here, and now I'm kind of almost belaying him. Did you see that? All right. Worst case scenario, if he's going downstream and for whatever reason I feel like I'm pulling too hard, I just let go, and hopefully we'll have more people downstream to grab him. That is that. I'm holding him like this, he's going downstream, go ahead and go all the way. The rope and the current will eventually bring him to shore. And once he's out of the main current, then I can just pull him in, like that. Okay? Last thing I'll show you, and then I'll let you guys try it all out. We'll bring that all the way out. If you throw the throw bag and it misses, and you don't have, the quickest thing to do would be to just drop this and grab another throw bag. Let's say we don't have an extra throw bag. We need to basically what we do call a recoil method, meaning I need to throw the throw bag again to see if I can get to that person. The way we recoil a throw bag that's already been thrown is basically a loop, and I just loop it on either side like this, and I just go back and forth. I'm not coiling it like an extension cord. I'm basically creating loops on either end of the rope. And you can, if you practice at it, you can actually get pretty good at doing this fairly quickly. So in the end, your rope should look something like this. Do you see that? And if you do it quick enough, you should be able to do this in about 15 seconds. Once I do that, I'm going to hang on to this part, give myself a little extra rope here, and I'm basically going to do the same thing. Rope! Okay? It's not perfect. It's not quite as good as coming straight out of the bag, but it does give you a quick way, you know, depending on how fast the water's moving. If it's moving 2 or 3 miles an hour, you should be able in 15 seconds or so be able to coil it back up again and try again, if you don't have another throw bag for this. Any questions on the throw bags? Cool. Alright, so the last thing with the throw bag is with the PFD. So we talked about like throwable objects, right? So this is a 70-foot bag, alright? So you figure if I'm going to take this and I want to try to get flotation to the person that's stuck out on the car, right? You know, I can, alright, probably about as best as I'm going to do. Accurate wise, I don't know. Again, if I miss him, if it's attached to a rope, it's probably not even going to travel that far, right? So the idea, what you can do, get a throw bag to the person that's on the car, all right? Hang on, you know, we talked about making that direct contact. Stay calm, we got you. Okay, what you can do is you can take this PFD and do this, all right? Take another throw bag. Everybody see what I did here? I didn't tie any knots. Don't expect, you know, bowling with a follow through. Don't expect anybody to know how to untie a knot. It might be cold. So the easiest thing to do is if you can use the buckles, all right, and attach it this way. And I say, sir, we're going to hand you a float PFD. Try to keep it out of the water. When you get it, hang on to the rope and put this on. Basically just hang on to it like this. Try to keep it out of the water because if it ends up in the water, it's going to push it to pull a little bit. Once he gets it on, direct him to unbuckle it, hang on, continue to hang on to the rope and put the PFD on. Don't give up, that's right, be encouraging. You don't want it to stay, make sure that he knows not to keep it tied to him, just to hang on to the rope. You don't want him tied to anything because if he does end up falling in at this point, he will, and he gets caught on something, he won't have a way to release it. Even if he doesn't know how to put it on tightly or correctly, at least at this point he's got some type of flotation. Right now, I'm happy. We've increased his survivability. Worst case scenario, he falls in the water, and now I've got the rope on, right? Now the current, as long as I hang on to him, is going to bring him right to shore, right? So, if you can at least get to this point on this fall to get him some type of flotation, however you decide to do that, that's going to be huge for the survivability of that victim or whoever's in the car. And if you got 2 or 3 people in the car, take 2 or 3 of your PFDs, attach them all together, and bring them all over at once. And this is where I say, like, if you don't have enough people, you know, 3 of the people that are on the scene, the engine and the ambulance on the scene, 3 of those guys have to give up their PFDs so we can put them on the patient. That's okay. Just make sure that those people aren't in or near the water. That makes sense? And then as more units come, we'll have more PFDs on each unit to do what we need to do. Any questions? Cool. All right. Go ahead and grab a pair up, grab a throw bag, and go ahead and just practice throwing back and forth.
everybody that's within the water's edge operation has to right?
Don't give up!
We know which way water is going. So the water is flowing this direction towards the traffic.
We're gonna save you! Just keep looking at me! Swim to me! You have to swim to me! You can't. Yeah, well, you're gonna have to. You can't. Well, then you're gonna be there a while. Hey, has water been going up or down?
It's stayed the same.
Excellent.
Okay.
How long have you been there?
About an hour.
That sucks. How'd you get there? You didn't swim? Oh. Alright. Where's your car? Oh, okay. I get it. We broke up to you. Put your hands up. Try to catch it. No!
Hey, it didn't make it. You have a longer one?
We're gonna keep trying.
We do? A longer one?
Alright, get ready, the rope's coming. Which way's the water moving? Oh, okay. Whoa!
Look at that. Good throw.
Alright, hang on to that. We're gonna try to send you a life jacket.
Okay. He cannot. So if you have some of the smaller bags we saw like...
How's it going? Cool.
You have a smaller bag. It is.
Okay, try to keep this out of the water. Pull it taut. Hand over hand to yourself. When it gets to you, put it on. And hang on to the rope. Don't leave the rope tied to the life jacket.
Which one do I hang on to?
The one that's coming to me.
Okay.
You can ditch the one that you have in your hand right now.
Okay.
We'll buy a new one. We'll charge you your insurance. Oh God. Selling the oil.
Alright, good. So he's got flotation now. Worst case scenario, the car floats up and now he starts playing with it. Got him on, we have a line catch on shore, he's got flotation. Hopefully it brings him shore. If not, somewhere downstream, we already looked at it. We brought him up.
Okay, just hang out. The water's going down. We're just going to wait for it to... You can just walk out in a little bit.
Alright, and then basically that's relay that to whoever is in command, the ECC, the Swiftwater guys, to let them know, hey, this scenario is wrapping up without a flotation. Is there any reason for Swiftwater to continue in? The water's going down, there's no more force starting. No, you can release Swiftwater. Yep, there, placement service.